Take us through what you reported this afternoon.
Well, it was a moving ceremony. You described it so correctly. It was a celebration of an extraordinary life. And it was a celebration of a time that seems past, right? A time of, as you point out, where bipartisan legislation on the environment, on civil rights, on disabilities, protections seem possible. And it was a celebration of a style of leadership, one that was very human in its orientation, a style of friends rather than enemies, a style of conciliation rather than anger. And it was I think, a moment for Washington to pause and reflect on the way things have gone lately. You saw the President of the United States, President Trump, sitting there watching all of this, not given a role to speak, pretty unusual for an incumbent president. At times seemed to be a little defiant. He held his hands up, arms up like this, as if he wasn't quite happy with what he was hearing, but otherwise kept quiet, decided not to make any remarks to spoil the occasion. So, it was a coming together for Washington, I think.
You covered this, the news of this, and the news of this was its contrast in some ways to great Senator McCain's funeral. You report there was less of an overt sense of rebuke to Mr. Trump than at the funeral for Senator John McCain in September, where he was not invited. But the implicit contrast between the former and current presidents were hard to miss. And you make this point that everyone felt, and I hadn't heard anyone say it out loud or write it till I read your piece, without directly saying so, the speakers pushed back against Mr. Trump's mockery of the former president's volunteerism slogan, 1,000 points of light, during campaign rallies this year. To us, the younger Bush said, his was the brightest of 1,000 points of light.
Well, that's exactly right. And John Meacham connected the 1,000 points of light to Abraham Lincoln and said they were the touchstones of the American national hymn, in effect. And I think that was intentional, whether it was, directly related to Trump's speech or not. They were a way of defining President Bush for this era and defining what politics could be the way they felt it should be. And I think that it was no accident. There were other moments, too. Brian Mulroney, the former Prime Minister of Canada, talked about the importance of NATO. He talked about the importance of NAFTA, both things that President Trump, who was just sitting about 10 feet away at that point, has questioned or criticized. And I think that there was, this discussion of finding the best in people and reaching out to people. Again, it was a testament to President Bush, but also it's hard not to hear that and watch the current president and wonder about the very different style of politics.
Michael Beschloss, where are we as a country when you cannot praise NATO allies and character without rebuking the current leader of our country?
If someone had given a eulogy like that 5 years ago and Mulroney...
2 years ago, right? 2 years ago.
And praised NATO, we would have probably been nodding off because what else would Mulroney do but praise NATO?
Now it's a headline.
Now it's a political act. If someone says George H.W. Bush was modest, it's a statement about Donald Trump. If someone says that, George W. Bush tried to reach across the aisle, that's what most people have done during most of American history, but hard to say it without it seeming like, I guarantee you that Donald Trump, who's not exactly known for not seeing everything in his own terms, I'm sure he took those things as insults rather than realizing that people were just saying what they were going to say.
It's such an interesting point that you make, because there has not been an example since he emerged on the political stage of him being able to see anything as not about him.
Right, it's
everything
all about
is
him.
about.
Right.
So this was a service. It was not about him,
no,
and I have to believe
not about him.
Right.
And the premise of being invited was that at least for maybe 2 hours you'd stop all this, and it's not about you, and just take it in.
And it really wasn't about him, and you could completely ignore him. I mean, because all he could do was sort of sit there, and the rest of the program went on. And it was, I thought it was very powerful, and I thought he was irrelevant, and it was a, it was a